Yes.
Hi. Okay, so overview of human resources and risk management starts in book 1 on page 41. So the org chart covers all of the HR staff that's involved in human resources and risk management. So no changes there from last year to this year. We have the 2 managers that each have 2 direct reports. So the training and employment on the left side, and then compensation, employee relations, and risk on the other side. And then if we turn the page to page 43, we have the overview of the department and all of the goals that we've accomplished towards the end of 2018, as well as the major goals for 2019 and 2020 that are listed here. First and foremost is, at the top, is negotiating the 4 collective bargaining agreements that we have coming up. And we have some challenges and opportunities with that as the market and cost of living in the area is increasing. We also have pressure increasing on insurance premiums and the cost of providing competitive compensation package. So obviously that's in our best interest to recruit and retain qualified people in the city. But we also have to balance that with looking at what our comparable organizations are doing to make sure that we're being competitive, that we're not unduly cutting any of the benefits that aren't being cut in other cities as well, to try and keep pace with the increase in the cost of living. So we have some challenges and opportunities there. And then the second item is the wellness program that the city offers. And we still have some benefits with Association of Washington Cities, and so our wellness group has 9 areas that they are evaluated on to receive that 2% reduction in premiums there. So they work very hard to do that. In 2019 and 2020, they have some plans on trying to provide some wellness benefits that will hopefully show a benefit in our renewal and our insurance premiums by trying to catch diseases early, so that the cost of care for those are lower versus allowing those diseases to manifest, and then it's more expensive in the premium costs because the cost of care is going to be higher, and we see that in our renewal. So we've been working with our wellness group and our broker to try and offer some screenings. You may have heard of those, of biometric screenings, where you do, a blood sample, and then you can get evaluated in some areas, and they can give you some further follow-up that you can take to your doctor. We offer some of those right now with well visits based on your age, certain screenings and things like that happen with well visits.
Aren't those very expensive?
They're actually included through Premier at a really low cost. So that was something that we uncovered, and there's another trust that offers that insurance throughout the state that has Premier that uses it as well. So we already have a model that we can model it after. So it's relatively inexpensive in our budget. If we were to bring in a standalone group that isn't associated with Premier, then it would have been more expensive, but it was actually, we were pleasantly surprised on that.
Yeah, because when I first heard about that was a couple of years ago, and I was going to go and do that, and I was shocked with the price, to go and get my analogy of with my DNA to see all my illnesses, and I'm going, wow. So, okay.
Yeah, well, there's varying levels of how intensive you can get, and so since it's included with the insurance, I think it's probably on the lower end of the list of things that you could get tested on. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to check in with my insurance because we have.
Yeah, and I was surprised to hear from our broker how many of those are offered during your well visits. I think sometimes doctors don't necessarily tell you about that, and so it's something that you have to ask, that they can do certain screenings based on age, and it's covered by your well visit. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. That's good to know. And then the third item down, healthcare costs. Obviously, that's something that we're looking at annually very heavily with our broker and looking at where other cities are paying as far as cost share and the types of benefit designs and benefit plans that they're offering. Fourth down, our efforts to recruit and retain qualified employees. Our staff works extremely hard with the amount of recruitments that we run in-house, of trying to work with the different departments and updating job descriptions and advertising in the appropriate places where we're going to pull the right applicants and the right pool of candidates to come in. Working with the staff, talking about other low-cost recruitment strategies that we can use to further screen. A good rule of thumb is always to have, objective and subjective testing criteria, and so also working on a training plan to train our evaluators that are sitting in on these panels. Really trying to make a focus on that we're trying to reduce any biases that any of our groups have, and making them aware of the legalities of what you can and can't ask in interviews and things like that. So trying to make sure that we have a qualified pool of evaluators that are looking for the best interests of the city. And then the fifth bullet down, successfully renegotiate the successor agreement with the public defender to extend the contract. So that's one of the areas on the slide up here that obviously, costs increase with these contracts that we've entered into. And so it's my understanding that we've typically gone out to RFP for those, and so having to discuss the increase in the costs due to increase in caseload, and that's the result of why we're seeing those increase. The next bullet on page 44 provides citywide training on critical administrative policies and procedures. So in 2018, we did a mandatory training on that. So we'll be going through, we have 82 personnel policies and 27 safety policies. So that'll be a big area that we'll be going through our policies to update and make sure that we're in compliance, and that we're identifying when issues or concerns come up, that we're providing clarity in that policy language so the employees of the city all know what's expected of them. And we actually had, there's a resource that's offered through LNI where they can come in and review your accident prevention program. So they've offered some policy updates as well. So we're well on our way to meeting that goal. And then the next item, develop and implement supervisory and management trainings for city staff. So one of the areas that we're wanting to develop in HR is a new supervisor training that we complete for all city staff. We have some internal resources that we can use, so it would really be staff time. We don't anticipate there being extremely high cost to develop this kind of program. It would just be HR staff time in putting together that program. And then the next item, continue the civil service diversity outreach program. So we've had a lot of success with this program of recruiting and retaining diverse candidates for our police officer positions. Our staff is part of a regional group of cities and King County that are working on this program. We actually have in September a diversity recruitment fair that we're going to be represented at. So we're pretty excited about that, and that it's a regional approach with other agencies. So it's going to hopefully gather attention from candidates in the region to come there and obviously sit. The types of services that are going to be offered there are through WorkSource. They're going to be offering resume screening. We're going to be offering to do one-on-one interviews from coaching the candidates on how they can better develop their interviewing skills so that they don't get filtered out at that interview level. So our group has been really proactive in this, and it's exciting because it's turning out well. It's resulting in a more diverse candidate pool for us. So the next item is the 12-month onboarding process. So we've been surveying different departments and asking how that's been received, and that's part of the retention efforts that HR is trying to do to make sure that once we bring new candidates into the city, we work so hard to get these great candidates for the city that we don't lose touch of them and that we keep them engaged and reach out to them throughout that first year. So that's been a very successful program, and it's been received very well. So any questions on any of those areas? Okay, just wanted to note on this slide too, something that we didn't cover there was the King County District Court costs obviously are going to be increasing for next year. So in speaking with Shelley there, even though we have this contract, it's still less than the cost of what it was costing the city to provide it internally. So it's still a competitive cost for us, even though the cost is increasing. Okay, so yes.
Councilmember Wells.
Thank you. Why is public defender and King County court costs under human resources and not under legal?
If I could answer that, Mayor?
Please.
The prosecutor, under state law, the prosecutor is prohibited from being involved in the selection of the public defender. So that would be something that we had to have HR do that, because I supervise the prosecutors. I can't be involved in the selection or management of the public defender contract.
Yeah.
So on page 45, we have some information on the insurance assessment and L&I claims. So it's pretty straightforward, but if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer it. Our L&I claims have gone down since we've gone to self-insured. We've seen a significant amount of savings of what we were paying the state to be fully insured, and we've been actively managing that and reducing claims. So I'm pretty proud of the work that the staff has done in that area.
Councilmember Brown.
With respect to the self-insured, I assume we have a third-party administrator. How have we had any feedback from employees of the city with respect to the change, whether or not they're getting adequate or feel comfortable with the services of the third-party administrator?
Yeah, I could definitely get some specific feedback from Melissa, who works on those claims. But I'd have to say that I think Melissa does a lot of the work as a liaison between the employee and that third-party administrator. So I feel like the customer service piece of it most likely has not suffered because she's extremely proactive in that. And that the third-party administrator, the cost is relatively low, and I think that's just because we're having them do the processing of claims and that paperwork, but they're not actually assisting and helping with that internal customer service perspective of having the employees navigate through the process. I think we're doing that in-house, so that might be why I haven't heard that there's any concerns on the feedback, but I can definitely check in to see if we have had any.
Yeah, I mean, in the work I do on the outside, we've had some experience with third-party administrators sometimes being a little problematic for the employees. Can save some money by, the processes that they use in terms of accepting or denying claims.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of those processes have stayed in HR, and so that's probably why the contract was so low that we got, is because I think we're making a lot of those decisions internally and not relying on the third-party administrator as much. And I've definitely had that experience too with insurance, where if you do rely on your third-party administrator a little too much to educate the employees, then sometimes they're misinformed or they provide guidance that isn't in line with what we would expect.
More separation between the employer and the employee.
Yeah, I don't personally like having to delegate that interaction to those third-party administrators, but I felt like we should keep that internally. Yeah. Okay. So if we want to go to book 2, page, there's comp starts on page 39. Oh, thank you. Okay, excuse me. 41.
Look at the work chart.
If you want to look at the work chart, I can. So for the workers' compensation fund, we talked a little bit about that, but there are 2 major goals that are listed there that we can go over. The first one is continuing to fund the rates based on the actuarial review and analysis. So we've met with the actuary already, HR and finance, to review what those recommendations are. And so we have further ongoing discussions of what that looks like. Obviously, since we've only been self-insured for a short period of time, we want to make sure that we have a healthy reserve in there. When I showed you in book 1 of the trend of the L&I claims on page 45, we had an uptick there in 2017 and 2018, and we have some pretty aggressive goals to try and keep those claims down, but understanding that sometimes we don't necessarily control those types of things. So trying to build up a reserve that is appropriate should we have a difficult year of high claims. From a safety perspective, obviously our staff is working as hard as we can, and with conjunction with L&I, to try and put in some best practices and update our policies and look at some trainings and other things that we need to do to try and actively manage this, so we're not relying on that reserve so heavily. The next item, continue to provide workers' compensation benefits for new and existing employees. Obviously, that's part of the program, and so we continue to actively manage that.